Hi, Pete Gustis here with PeteGustis.com, MillionaireMansionsForSale.com, and Philly Commercial Real Estate.com. That's Philly Metro CRE.com. I just want to explain some of the new changes with the laws that took effect on August 17th because I've seen so much confusing and maybe misinformation online. First of all, before any appointments, we're supposed to provide one of two documents, maybe three: consumer notice, non exclusive buyer agency, or buyer tenant agency. There's a different one for leasing too, but I'm just going to try to keep this simple. First of all, consumer notice is not a contract to do any business. What this just does is explain the types of relationships that you can have with a real estate agent. So, if a real estate agent is helping somebody sell a property, they're considered a seller's agent. And a seller's agent has a fiduciary responsibility to keep certain things in confidence with that seller and do their best to help them achieve their goals, which one of which is usually sell the property. Buyer agent, if you ask someone or find somebody competent to help you buy a property, that would be considered a buyer agent. And that's where these new laws kick in. Typically, the buyer agent would have to explain to you their agency relationship, explain to you how compensation works, which I'll do that in a moment, and explain to you that they actually get paid for their job. Seems like in the past, due to this lawsuit, they were trying to claim that sellers were being forced to do things. I do not agree with these statements, by the way, did not understand things, and buyers also did not understand certain things. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I've met people who never bought a house before, and they were like, well, how do you get paid? And of course, I've always explained that. But now they're telling us that we have to put all this in writing and show people ahead of time because some people maybe did not understand that agents get paid typically a commission for their services. The next would be dual agent. Dual agent means if somebody like myself has a property listed for sale, you see the sign or an ad, you call, you come directly to me, then I would be considered a dual agent. That means I'd be helping the buyer and I'd be helping the seller. In that case, I would be considered a dual agent. For some reason, some people feel that you can't be a dual agent. You can't be fair and honest to both parties. And when people say that, for me, I kind of don't understand that because when you're looking at this process, it's no different than what a mediator does. And people hire mediators all the time to basically work through problems to come to terms. So a lot of times have been a dual agent, never had a problem with it. But if you do feel that dual agency is not your best representation, you have the option, even if you contact a listing agent directly, like myself, to have a designated agent. And what a designated agent would be is that agent that is a listing agent, they would get somebody else to represent you. If you feel you need to talk to somebody and you feel the person you're speaking to uh, can't be truthful to you, I would say, or honest or fair to all parties. But that's being said, there's your option to select a designated agent. And another way of conducting business, and this is for Pennsylvania, by the way, because some laws have different rules and regulations, is a transaction licensee. What a transaction licensee typically does is they basically sit in the middle and basically transact properties. And most of the times, what transaction licensee in Pennsylvania is when some people are for sale by owners, or they might be friends or family. They're selling a property and they want somebody to basically take care of all the paperwork and help them do all the other things necessary to get the property to closing. Because a real estate agent's job typically is just to help them sell a property, get the contract done, and then after that time, there's usually a transaction manager, or the seller or buyer could do it themselves. Typically, they do not do all that stuff themselves, or the agent helping the seller or the buyer sometimes will take the role of a transaction person and help them do all the things necessary to close a property. So that's the best way to explain that. Regardless of your business relationship, an agent's job is always supposed to be honest and to uh, to act on the party that they're representing in good faith. So these are the documents that you'll be sent shortly. Now, most of the times when I meet people for the first time, I always like to go over the non-exclusive buyer agency contract. What just means is you are viewing a property or reviewing information with the agent, which in this case would be me. And in this case, you do not have to have an exclusive relationship with me. You can sign non exclusive buyer tenant agencies with multiple people, and that is compliant. That means if I show you 123 Main Street, 324 Washington Street, and 567 Jefferson Street, if you decide to buy one of those properties, you're supposed to use me as the agent. And if you looked at another property, 567 Main Street with someone else, and you decided to buy that property, you would typically be using that other agent in that other non-exclusive buyer tenant agency. So that just describes that. And if you do have the properties listed ahead of time, this would allow you to put the addresses there, or they can be added separately. Um, right here, there's a rule and regulation on the broker fees. And that's one thing that has been big on the news because a lot of people did not seem to understand this. Now, some of the changes that occurred is they no longer advertise a listing agent's seller's co-op commission in the MLS. In the past, it would be listed, and some people said it was unfair to have that listed. Not really sure one way or the other how that would completely be unfair because the sellers are the ones who make the choice on that. It's nobody can make them decide what they want to pay people. But in this type of scenario, when you enter into an agent's agreement, they basically say, "This is what I'm used to getting paid for the services that I do." A lot of times it would be a percentage, or it could be a flat fee, or it could be both. And if you do read this, it says whichever is greater. Then it says if a seller is not represented, then this would be the potential fees. Sometimes there's also a paperwork processing fee, which would be a transaction management fee, broker service fee, transaction licensing fee, because some companies will just transfer you to some excuse me, somebody else to do all the paperwork. Um, Something new which was added in 2020 August would be the retainer fee. Some companies did charge retainers, but they did not always mention this maybe in good faith, and they would only bring up the retainer if a buyer or a seller said, "Hey, I decided I'm not working with you anymore." And then they would say, "Well, you signed this and there's a fee that you owe me now." So now they're putting this directly in there. So you would know ahead of time if there's a retainer. Sometimes that's charged in advance when you meet. Other times it could be charged if you decide you do not want the service of the person you hired. So that's there. If you lease a property, that will be listed here too. And okay, if designated agency is not applicable, this would be checked. That means you find someone online, you do not contact their listing, but then they're helping you as a buyer. So that goes over that there. By the way, if you do sign a non-exclusive agency agreement, you could always change that later if you decide to an exclusive agency agreement. Or even though you've signed a non-exclusive buyer agency agreement, you can still decide you want to be loyal with an agent who's helping you. So there's a couple things there. And I did go over some of these other things. I actually just kind of passed them, but you do have other rights that you can look at here, and please feel free to review that. Now, an exclusive buyer agency contract, I typically don't send that to my clients when I first meet them because I know when it comes to just searching around the internet, you don't know who you found. You might not be comfortable. And in my career, plenty of times people said, hey, I just met this person. They told me to sign this. And now they're telling me if I don't use them, I owe them money. I don't think that's a great way to do business, but do some people have they done that in the past? Certainly they've had. And if for some reason that happens, I've always told my client, we can sign a new one of these. We're just going to notate the problem that you had. I will call the other agent, explain that you're not working with them anymore. And that typically, most of the times, 99% of the times would go away. And keep in mind, when it doesn't go away, is might be a whole scenario where if they showed you a property, 567 Main Street, and then all of a sudden you contact me and say, hey, I want to buy 567 Main Street. That other agent could say, hey, I'm the one who showed them that property. And now you're quote unquote, just trying to jump in to get a commission or something. That's not really the goal, but if you don't feel comfortable working with someone for a certain reason, you could always notate that, and that could be something that could be handled later. But exclusive buyer agency contract usually means you're only going to work with that one agent, and there are terms that you should be aware of. There's a start date, the end date. It does ask if you're working with anybody else, if you signed one of these contracts. The fees, of course, which are very similar to the other type of structure. By the way, when you see these fees, some people are asking if they owe this when they purchase a property. And one thing to keep in mind is most real estate agents, keep in mind there's no set fees. They do have fees that they typically charge or are used to getting paid when they transact a property. But still, sometimes that fee could be lower. So that doesn't mean automatically you owe someone X amount of money when you purchase a property, because about historically 99.9% of the time, a seller realizes that they would be paying a buyer's agent and their fees are included in the sale price. So just want to make that clear. If for some reason a seller says we don't want to pay anything, that's when a buyer's agent would have come back to his buyer, you, and say, hey, this person is not willing to pay anything. And then you can have a discussion on how to craft a deal with the agent that you've selected. This goes into leases again, right here, designated agency, and a bunch of other little disclosures that you might find interesting or feel like you want to read. But I basically want to go over the nuts and bolts so you can understand hiring a buyer's agent, and in particular, a non exclusive buyer agency when you're meeting a new agent for the first time. But for me, my name's Pete Gustis. I'm a real estate agent, been doing this for 18 years, maybe a little bit longer. I also wrote a book, show you it right here. It is How to Sell Real Estate, available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, any online retailer. And if you want an insight on how real estate works, how it is to work with agents, feel free to check out the book. But I've been doing this for a while, and I'd be happy to help you if you want my help. All right. Thank you very much and have a great day. Oh, my number, 610-209-9219. It's Pete Gustis.